This podcast is brought to you by RPM Studios, located at 1027 Camels Run Road in Carnegie, Pennsylvania. RPM Studios offers a full line of digital media production services, such as podcasting, live streaming, video production, post-production, multi-track recording, digital graphics. For more information, please check out our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/RPM Studios. Now on with the show.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a
podcaster.
Do you expect me to talk?
No matter what anybody tells you, words and ideas can change the world.
You have a big mouth.
And a very pleasant good evening, everybody, and welcome to Don't Quit Your Day Job and to RPM Studios. We're here, special show tonight, different kind of show. We're going to be going in a different direction with some of the shows here at Don't Quit Your Day Job. Veering off to the left of the entertainment industry and music, which is what we normally like to talk about. But I have here in the studio with me tonight a friend that's been here before, and we talked about his musical career. But tonight we're going to get a little bit more serious and discuss his daytime job and his professionalism on that level. And so I want to welcome back to the studio Brady Novotny. Brady, welcome back.
Hey, Jim. Thanks for having me again.
Thanks for coming back in.
Buddy.
If I didn't turn you off the first time, there's hope for us yet.
Anytime I can talk about sex, I guess, you know.
Yeah, well, you jumped the gun on me there.
I'm sorry.
Well, perhaps we can jump right into it then.
That's right.
So you are...
they think I'm a male stripper now or something.
Well, let's let that one hang in the air for a minute.
Maybe, huh?
Okay, let's let their imaginations run wild for just a second.
What's that mean?
Well, all right, let's put it out there. You are a certified counselor, sex therapist.
That is correct. Yeah, licensed professional counselor and certified sex therapist.
Okay.
The real deal, not a homemade one.
The real deal.
Yeah, not a self-proclaimed one.
Yes, no, this is a very, very serious area of mental health.
Yes.
So it's something which you take very seriously, and you meet with patients one-on-one and discuss with them their problems, activities, lifestyles. I don't know.
Everything from under the sun. I mean, when it comes to sexuality nowadays, there's so much going on. It's so open. It's very... it's received well. I mean, people can talk about it pretty openly nowadays, and people are not embarrassed or, for the most part, ashamed to bring up certain things. And
not since things like pornography has gone so mainstream.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And there's just so much sexuality portrayed openly in the media, in entertainment now, compared to the way it used to be. And so now we have the transgender movement. That's something I want to get into with you. In the psychological problems that go along with that, which I'm sure are very deep and very compelling. But yeah, things have changed. And let's face it, man. Sex is a weird thing. It's not just about in the human brain. It's not just about reproduction like it is with most species here on this planet. It's we do weird things with it in our minds. And some people act upon that, and that becomes a bigger problem. I keep thinking about the Catholic Church and pedophilia and all that kind of thing. These are very, very serious things. But so why don't we just get started by letting you? How does one? Did you have a proclivity towards this? How did you decide to get into this area, and what actually goes into making this a career?
Right. Well, I didn't know I was going to be a sex therapist. You have to really go through the hoops of getting your degree, in counseling. So you have to go through, at least a master's program, if not a doctorate program.
And where did you go to school?
I went to Liberty University.
Which is where? I'm not familiar.
Lynchburg, Virginia.
Okay, out of Virginia. Right.
Yeah. And so I got my counseling degree there. And so I went for 6 years. And studied all the counseling, took all the tests that needed to be taken. and got licensed in the state of Pennsylvania. So, to get through all those hoops to be able to hang your shingle, so to speak, is a lot of work. Not only with all the schoolwork. I remember when we had this thing called a comprehensive exam, and you had 3 tries to pass it. Basically, everything you learned in school, you had to pass within 3 times. If not, you were basically kicked out of the program.
Wow.
And you lost everything. You got awarded a social service degree or something like that.
Well, so they had a pretty high bar for you then.
Yeah. So those were stressful times. But then once you get out, the state of Pennsylvania requires you to take another test, their test, along with internship hours, basically free work. So you had 3,600 hours you had to do just free.
Now, when you take a test of that type, does it test your general knowledge, what you've learned, or maybe your instincts in this area? I mean, how do they question you? I mean,
everything from what you just said to statistics to because psychology, it really encompasses a lot of different areas. Not only I wanted to be a counselor. I didn't want to be a researcher. So, but you still had to learn statistics and how to handle that and how to do some studies and how to do all that. But, there's categories you had to do, and ethics were one, and the counseling setting was another, and then statistics was another, and I can't remember all of the areas, but then they jumbled them all up into like 200 questions, and you had to have this many right or you failed. Right. And you paid your money, and luckily I passed each test on the first time. So I am proud of that.
So at that level, then, when you're just getting started, it's sounding like it's almost kind of like being involved with law, being a lawyer. So you're looking for precedents. At least they do in law. Cases that establish precedents, which you can fall back on, and say, look, this is the way we're going to have to go on this because we have an established precedent. You rely on statistics to say, in all likelihood, this might be the problem with this individual because statistically speaking, this is wrong or that is wrong.
Yeah, and some of the times all the answers are right. It's just what's the more right answer.
Right.
And that can be tough.
Completely.
Because depending on you and depending on how you studied and how you view ethics and how you view, counseling techniques and stuff like that, what's the right approach? And, who knows how they score it or why they score it the way they do.
Sure.
They just, that's just part of their protocol.
So how did you transition then from academia into the workforce in this area?
Well, after you get your little, or not little, big degree and your license, at the same time, I was traveling to Atlanta, Georgia. I was attending another school. Meanwhile, while I was working as well as a worship worship director at a church, so I was, doing music ministry.
Right.
And then I was doing my internship hours and then traveling to...
Which is a big part of who you are. So please, you're talking about it now, so please feel free to tie that all together because it is really relevant.
Yeah, it should be a book where I was started out in my early teenage years. I wanted to be a rock star, switched to worship leader, switched to therapist. Now I'm back to a rock star. So.
Yeah, why don't you throw in a race car driver,
right.
Mountain climber, spelunker,
right.
Deep sea fisherman, I don't know. Whatever.
So, but I started, it was another called Richmond University, and I studied sex therapy there. And I did, I forget.
Now, why sex therapy, Brady? I mean, why did that area of psychology, why did that attract you? Sure.
How deep do I go? I guess the thing to take you back, as you know, I'm married. My wife's name is Jennifer, and I'm happily married, and we've been married for going on 14 years, and she's the love of my life. And but before that, I was married to someone else in my early 20s, mid to early 20s, and we got divorced.
Well, that'll make you an alcoholic, not necessarily a psychologist. Yeah.
Right. But it was by, I'll say this, but it was by her choice, even though, I say this, how can I say this very decently? If I could go back and thank her for doing that, because I really love my wife now, so I would never have met my wife. So, but
Funny how things work out.
yeah, there. So, but when I got divorced, I had a break of like, I really didn't think and I could go into, that could be a whole podcast in itself, but of what happened, because those things don't usually end well. And I really felt that I didn't do anything, the punishment didn't fit the crime, or the crime didn't fit the punishment, whatever but so I didn't know really what I did, and I was like, because I figured out.
So you felt a little bit victimized?
I was like, I'm a nice guy. I didn't do anything wrong. I'm loyal. I'm faithful. I'm like, however, it happened what it happened. And so I was just really I knew I wanted to get married again. And I was like, I'm going to make this right. So I just had a drawn to like marriage counseling. I wanted to know for myself, why did things not work out, and why do they do? So I went, that was sort of the start of it. The sex therapy thing, I remember taking an elective, and, they have like a guest speaker come in from the outside and do a talk. And he was a sex therapist. And for some reason, when he was talking, it was like something inside me says, I want you to do this. So I called an intuition or a spiritual pull. It was like, that was the direction I wanted to go to. So much so that I ended up going, combining everything that I was doing and flying to Atlanta, every couple months to complete my certification in sex therapy.
Now, is it an ongoing educational process? I mean, are you constantly going to school and learning new things?
No, once you're done, you have to do continuing education work.
Well, yeah, but I would think so.
But nothing like
say like a
you're not writing term papers.
A regular medical doctor with learning new surgical techniques or something like that. It's not quite like that.
If I got another certification, it would take another I forget how many hours and another probably $5,000 to $10,000 to do. But yeah,
So how do they define it? I mean, how do they say, okay, this is what you're lacking. If you want this additional certification, you have to learn this, which you don't already know. I mean, what is that area? I mean,
those areas can be.
I guess what I'm asking is, what areas of this?
How many areas are there?
Well, yeah, I mean, and I guess, but where is it developing the most? How does your field? How is it changing over the years? I mean, what area of your field is changing the most?
In sex therapy, it's pretty consistent. There's not a whole. I mean, there's more classes on when the whole transgender thing hit. About that and a lot of.
I would think, increasing social pressures that come along with, the
and
information age and everything else.
But relationships are relationships, sex is sex. And when there's more things that come out and more findings, they might throw a class out there or something like that. Okay. But nothing big. But unless you get into like, different type of trauma work where you're doing like what they call EMDR stuff, where you're doing not hypnosis, but you're
What's
doing,
EMDR?
Well, that we'll have to do a little.
It's a little too involved for this right now. Okay,
yeah.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah, that's definitely a different specialty that helps trauma victims.
Okay.
Get past their trauma.
Okay.
So like PTSD.
PTSD. That's what I was just going to say. Yeah. Okay.
For sure. But if somebody's been raped or has been sexually abused in some way, or through an occult, or through just a date rape or something like that can be part of the sex therapy as well.
Okay. Yeah.
So there can be a team of therapists working together to help an individual get through what they need to get through.
Well, that's got to be heavy to deal with that stuff. Heavy for the individual, heavy for you to try to offer help.
Sure.
How much of it is kind of like what we see, the way that we see psychologists and psychiatrists portrayed on television, where it seems to me like the patients really want to speak. And you're offering yourself as a conduit. You're offering yourself as a way to get them. You're prompting them to talk. And a great bit of the therapy is you being sensitive enough in a way to pull that out of them, because it's cathartic, and they can, that coming out and them telling that story helps your understanding, helps their understanding. I mean, is that kind of the main part of it, or?
Yeah, well,
Or am I just missing it? Am I overgeneralizing?
No,
or
I think a lot of everyone's individualized. You know, some people want to come in, they want to know your advice, and I'm like, well, you know, I can help you, but let's find out some more information. It's always about digging more information
Right.
and me asking the right questions to make them think. Now, some people are more schooled in therapy because they've been going to therapy their whole life, or they just know a little bit more about it, or they just want that. I mean, I had this one time, you know, a young girl, and she came in, and it was it was very cute, and she was there for just some general stuff, nothing major. You know, some school problems or something like that. But it was cute. You know, she would come in, you know, take her shoes off and lay down on the couch. It was like old school,
classic,
like Freudian.
yeah, Freudian.
I was like,
So tell me, what seems to be the problem?
sweetheart, you don't have to do that. It was just, she's like, no, I'm fine.
Tell me about your mother and your father.
You know, so, but if that was if that was the hardest part of my job, that'd be a cakewalk. But when you get people that come in that are, you know, I see a lot of affair work. You know, and when private practice, we see a lot of marriage counseling, a lot of affair work, a lot of, you know, and affairs happen for many different reasons, a lot of pornography addiction. I have seen people, you know, struggling with pedophilia that are now in prison for life. You know,
I just saw something on the internet just this week for the first time. There are applications you can put on your phone, and there are, I guess, an equivalent to a sponsor if you're in AA or NA,
Sure.
Where it's a buddy system for porn addiction. And you keep track of the porn that you watch, and you have to be accountable for it to yourself and to your buddy, who is your, they call them buddy sponsors. I don't know, but it's actually a phone app. And I think, well, this has certainly hit the mainstream now.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, just this week, the very first time I saw that, I was like, it almost seemed like a joke or a parody at first, but then I realized at the end, this is serious. It's a a real thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different things out there. I know that there was even talk about the whole sex doll brothels and everything that are happening in Canada, and I think in Texas or something like that. But you know, it's crazy that how we've perverted perversion.
Well, I noticed in my travels in countries like Western Europe, and where they have a much more open attitude towards sex, there doesn't seem to be as many problems. It seems with repression of sex by society, like in Japan, the UK, and to a certain extent in the United States. Those are the most notorious countries. You have a lot of weird things that go on underneath that, which seem to be as a result of that societal repression. You know, I mean, how much do you encounter that kind of thing? And am I correct? I mean, do you feel that like an open attitude, healthy attitude towards sex, like leads to just having a healthy life?
Well,
is there a connection? I guess is what I'm asking.
Let's see if I can answer your question right. When somebody comes in and you know, if it's porn addiction or extramarital affair, or you know, it could be a lot of different things. We always take the holistic approach from you know, there's a human side of lust and everything. There's an emotional side of our deep longing for connection, and longing for love. I mean, when it comes down to it, we all desire intimacy at some level.
And approval.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, and then depending upon the moral aspect, you know, spiritually as well, you know, is there a spiritual connection for you in all of that? So do you bring
your faith into your clinic, into your...
Only if they want it.
Okay.
Only if they ask for it. Okay. You know, because yeah, I think, you know, technically I'm not allowed to really say much about my personal life, you know, but if somebody says,
no, I wouldn't think so. No.
Yeah. Well, but if somebody wants, you know, what does, you know, I'm a Christian. What does the Bible say about sex toys? Am I allowed to have sex toys in the bed? Or, anal sex, is that wrong? Or is this wrong? Or, I feel shameful or like it's a sin, if me and my spouse do this, and so a lot of things are done through, we've been paired a lot, we've been lied to a lot, by a lot of things. And, but also it also comes down to, the intimacy of the couple. If there's a strong intimacy of the couple, and you're talking about things and you're working, on developing a healthy sex life. Sex is really, I like to say in sex therapy that it's the overflow of everything. Sex is not the beginning and the end. It's sort of the overflow of everything. It's like the friendship, and Gottman, he's a big marriage guru guy, John Gottman. He would say that friendship is the foundation of any relationship.
Sure.
So if you have a strong friendship,
I buy that.
Yeah, and then you combine that with some form of light intimacy, flirtation, fun, just laughing and all that stuff, that friendship and flirting. And then out of all that communication, we have the communication of sex, which really kind of flows very naturally, rather than if we're always looking for the sex and miss. See, when people come in the office, you take that friendship, flirtation, or that, that light intimacy, non-sexual intimacy, I guess we'll call it, and sex, you have to have three to have a pretty strong marriage or relationship with somebody. Most people have one of those missing. Right. And that's what we work on.
Do you work with couples?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so not just, is it more couple or is it more individual in your office? It varies from season to season. Oh, really?
Yeah. Sometimes, I'll have 80% marriage, and then sometimes it will be singles, individual people. So, yeah. So.
Did you notice a pattern, like things pick up around Christmas time or something? I don't know.
There are times that things pick up in the counseling world, fall being one of them.
Wonder why? Why would that be?
People going back to school, back to their routine. I believe, we all have theories, weather's changing, Christmas or New Year's, Christmas obviously is the start of the new year, right?
Well, that's a tough, traditionally that's been a tough time of year for people that have some type of
depression.
Yeah, depression, the holidays, and they're alone or whatever the case might be, but yeah.
And then springtime, I see a lot of influx in sex or porn addiction and sex addiction come out. So mainly what I hear is the joggers are out, the sun's beating out, and the weather's warming up, and people are more
Let me
active.
tell you what, as a single guy, when I was living in New York City, as soon as the weather started getting warm and the ladies started walking around with taking advantage of the warm weather, if you know what I mean, that was always a joyous time. Sure. Just go hang out down at Washington Square Park and just enjoy the sights.
Right. Sure.
But of course, yeah, the thing with pornography is no joke now with the internet, because it's so readily available. Right. Not only is it readily available, but every subgenre of pornography that you could possibly want is out there at your fingertips.
Oh, if you go
which gets into some really crazy things, which I'd like to get into as much as you feel comfortable talking about. But it certainly has changed. When I was a young kid, it was a big deal to find a Playboy magazine, and you and your buddies would run behind the
right, and
the store, and and share the magazine and pass it around, and and it was just basically pictures of beautiful women. Now you get into some things that are, it almost seems like the bar keeps getting raised, and it's got to keep getting more for younger kids today. It's a lot more extreme behavior than it was when we were younger. Is that true, or is that? It certainly is in how it's depicted in porn, but in practical behavior amongst people. Do you find that's
Yeah, it's very desensitizing for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
You know, what I mean, because what porn does, for the most part, and all this stuff is there's a percentage that what I'm saying is a large percentage of it, but there's a smaller percentage that it could be something else. But for the most part, when a male clicks on, typically, because females do too as well, but when a male clicks on a porn site, at the start of a click, there's a turned on woman, and that is, there's no work involved, there's no rejection. It's just, remember those three bubbles I was talking about, the friendship and light intimacy and sex. We skipped the first two and we went right to the sex.
right?
You know, so, at the click of a button, we get the end result.
That's changed too. I mean, if you remember, I know I'm older than you are, but when we first started watching porn films, and we would have to go to the drive-in to see that. That was even before the VHS revolution.
You had to wait for the scenes. Right?
You had to wait. You had to listen. There was a plot, and there was some really bad acting, and there were dumb lines, and there was, the pretense of a character development, and and yeah, you had to wait
Corny
for
music and
it. Sometimes great music. I go back. You can actually listen to porn soundtracks from the '70s on YouTube, and it's the greatest. Some of it's just the greatest stuff you've ever heard. But anyways, yeah. Now it's like all that pretense is gone. Like you said, it just jump into the main event.
Right.
Boom.
Yeah. So a lot of males, are starting to rewire their brain that way, and causes problems in the home, because I want you to act like this. And it's not so much, and this is where I could get in trouble, so to speak, but maybe not. It's not so much that the spouse is not open to some of those things, because I have a lot of wives that will come in and saying, if he would love me the way I want to be loved, that's not a problem. He just wants this without doing anything about it.
Right.
And that causes a problem.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. Yeah, where the guy, and I'm not saying this is kind of a stereotype, which I've experienced. I'm not saying it's this way with everybody, but the guy's looking for excitement, and the woman's looking for intimacy,
Right.
and then never the twain shall meet sometimes, which causes problems in relationships. So, yeah, I can get that. Do you think? You've got to believe that most of the pornographic is making sex unrealistic, that it's really not like that in the real world. I guess for some people it is.
It is for.
Is it just an unrealistic level that we just can't hit or maintain with our personal relationships?
Well, I also break it down too for couples in the session, and we call this, there's a small percentage of what we call pity sex, and then there's a larger percent of what we call connecting sex, and then another small percentage, which will make up 100% of erotic sex. Now, pity sex is when the couple just isn't getting along, and it's been a while, or they haven't had sex for over a year or something like that, and they know they need to do it, and no pun intended, I'll just throw you a bone, so to speak. So it's out of pity. I'm just going to do this for you, so you leave me alone. Obviously, that would destroy a relationship. About 80% of our sex life is called connecting, which is basically, it's good. It's maybe not great, maybe not the most erotic, but it's good. And it helps keep the intimacy and communication going. Those can be made up of quickies. Those can be made up of, longer intimate moments or whatever. Now, the last part is what porn teaches us, but it can't happen in a relationship, which is the erotic. And that makes up about maybe 10%. And this is when all the planets align. They call it vacation sex.
Yeah.
You're out of your routine. Orgasm is explosive, and it's wonderful, and lingerie flying all over the ceiling fan and all that stuff. those happen, it happens, but not as much as the connecting. And when you balance the connecting with the erotic, you kind of, you're happy, you're more content in a relationship. But if you're always trying to get to the erotic 80% and connect 20%.
The vacation sex, as you refer to it, it would seem to me that ultimately is not going to be successful because you're putting too much pressure on each other. Like the expectations are too high. We're going to go to Bora Bora, and we're going to have crazy mad monkey sex,
Right.
and it's going to be great, and it's going to revive our relationship. And but then you go down there and you realize you're putting too much pressure on yourselves and each other. I mean, is that part of the? It seems like that would be part of the problem.
Well, and then there's another part of this too. Trying to make sure I make this so everyone can understand. Within all that, the three bubbles and everything, they also have kind of found out that there's these things called sex languages. How we view sex and what is our the way that we enjoy sex. So and I kind of brushed up on this a little bit before. I use it a little bit, but not too much, in my practice. But it makes sense. There is what they call people that have like a fun language, where sex is very fun, meaning that they like to have fun with sex. They like to explore with sex. They like to maybe go on a rooftop and have sex, or go in a car, or bring sex toys in, or lingerie, or whatever it may be. It's all fun. It's an event. It's like, this is great. And that person has that type of language. And then there's another language called desire. And that person is more about wanting their partner to desire them. Not necessarily where we're going to do it or where we're going to have this fun, but I want you to desire me. Meaning, and it can almost feel a little selfish in sex, because all the pleasure is based on that person. So when the couple kind of figures these things out, you can kind of work on them together. It's like, oh, well, you really have that fun language. Okay, well, I'm willing to go do that with you. And that helps fulfill that need for that person. And the other person gets exposed to it and maybe can kind of swing to the middle a little bit. And then when the other person realizes that their spouse or partner is desire based, it's like, oh, well, that makes sense. I want to, show you that I desire you and only want you, and put all my attention on you in that moment. And rather than, are we going to do it on the rooftop of Walmart?
Right. That kind of goes back to what I was saying about the intimacy, versus, the fun and the adventure, that type of thing. Yeah. That does make a lot of sense. What is your most frequent issue that you encounter? Is there one that seems to be more common than anything else?
And I guess for the most part, pornography addiction is a big one. Yeah. In marriage, it's more about communication. Like I said, those three circles, they're usually missing out on that flirtation one. It's just like we just don't feel like we used to. We're not close. We're not connecting. How do we get that connection back? We have sex and we go to movies and go to dinner, but we're missing something. So I usually with those couples, I usually try to work on that middle part. And then, obviously with the porn stuff, that's a whole different issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How often do you encounter the identity crisis kind of thing, sexual identity? It comes in waves at times. I'm not in a wave of it, which how do I say this? Clinically, I'll take as many people as I feel comfortable. Personally, it's a difficult topic. Right. Do you shy away from those types of things? Sometimes I because it's so involved and so
deep
I would imagine so. Yeah.
because there's so many people involved. You know, it's one thing if you're in your, you know, later on in life and you decide to do this, but it's a lot, seems to be a lot more
Yeah.
teenage years. And, you know, that messes up a whole family dynamic,
Sure, it would.
you know. And so even if I counsel the person, you know, who's going through that, then I have to see mom, dad, brother, sister, who all go to the same school now, and how all that impacts everything, you know.
Well, on that same end, but probably a lot more common than, say, somebody who feels that they're in the wrong body, okay, is just plain old everyday common homosexuality, you know, which is now it's become so like passe, you know.
Sure.
1 in 10 people, and people, I guess statistics are saying it's even more prevalent than that, more than 1 in 10. So, I mean, I would imagine you're getting a lot of that with young people who, you know.
Homosexuality has not been, I haven't, maybe earlier in my practice, but nowadays.
You think maybe it's not such a big problem anymore?
It seems like people, to be honest, people are more accepting of that, and transgender is now
Transgender is now the hot topic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, which, yeah, well, you know, is very impacting to a family unit. You know, and, you know, they say that the person who's been struggling with this for years, you know, has finally made their decision that come out that I am this, and expects everybody else to jump on board. When everybody that they're expecting to jump on board has just now found out.
Which brings up something that it seems to be a current phenomenon that we're kind of dealing with. Some people are truly confused, and there are things going on which I don't understand, you know, medically, in their bodies that are causing this doubt, causing this confusion, causing them to feel very assuredly that they are not who they're supposed to be, or not, you know. But how much of that, don't you think there's a certain percentage of hysteria that goes along with that, where some people just being faced, especially younger people, being just faced with everyday societal pressures and peer pressure, are mistaking that, and they're getting confused, and maybe they're looking for attention, maybe they're so they're bringing something into it that maybe isn't really there, you know. Do you ever encounter that and help people to kind of just weed through that?
Well, it is a difficult process with all that. So it all depends why they're there.
Right.
Are they there? And this is where it gets why I probably don't advertise for it as much anymore, so to speak. Because what I found, at least in my practice, you know, a lot of times when teenagers would come in and they're saying that this is my gender, you know, they're boy, I lost my train of thought.
Yeah. I can imagine, though. I mean, why? Maybe that is a certain very specific field within what you do, within your field. Because along with that, a person that's really sure that they have a problem in that area, a lot of things happen, you know, thoughts of suicide. I mean, it gets very dark and very serious, you know.
Well, yeah. You know, the person that comes in, you know, they want me to side with them, and they want me to convince their mom and dad that this is who they are.
Really? Okay.
You know, and that's not my job.
I was just going to say
that's not my
that's
job.
Yeah.
My job is not to convince anybody of that. You know, and you know, when sometimes when we ask the question, well, you know, you want to be male or female, but what's it really? Why? You know, what does it really feel to you to be male or female? And some of my people, their answers are very surfacey. You know, well, I want to wear makeup. I want to look pretty. I want to do, and then when mom's in the room, and we ask mom, what does it mean to be female? You know, I mean, it's a lot different.
But isn't that more of just a homosexual thing when in being effeminate? You know, a male being effeminate, and I mean that goes all the way back.
Sure.
I mean, my God, how long has that been filtering into rock and roll? We had this conversation before. You know, the glam bands of the late '60s and early '70s. I mean, the whole gender, just. I don't want to get into off on a tangent about music, but that seems almost like we were saying, pretty much common now. It gets a lot more serious, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, when they start. Well, I'm not just a boy that likes boys or whatever. I am a boy that really should be a girl. Really should be a girl. You know?
Still likes girls.
Yeah, or yeah, right. Right, that's a whole other thing too. You know,
It gets very confusing.
It does.
very
I have to admit, it does.
Yeah, I mean, and you it starts to really twist your mind a little bit. You know, even when you're working, you know, and talking through these things and everything, and still right now, I mean, you know, gender dysphoria is, you know, still in the DSM. So you know, you know, so you know. But, you know, it's a topic. There's a real person in there, and they have real feelings, and I don't doubt that. It's just, it's not an easy road, you know.
Yeah.
You know, and it at least in my experience, you know, the family, it does a lot of. It has done some damage than what I have seen. I mean, I've had moms and dads, you know, on the floor in a fetal position crying, you know, because they feel that they've lost their daughter or son.
And the parents feel it's their fault. They've done something wrong.
Of course, there's all shame everywhere, and then their brother or sister is like, well, now how am I going to do this? And then, of course, if you ask the person who's going through all this, they'll be like, well, you know, you just have to accept me, and I understand there's a lot of sides to this, and that's the hard part, you know, because I can't side with anybody, you know. I'm loyal to my patient, you know, and I want to help my patient as best I can, but why are they there? You know, are they there to talk about their feelings about gender dysphoria? Are they there, you know, secretly to, I want to talk about these, but I want you to win my parents over. And that game I don't play because it's just not worth it. It's just too much. And when that comes out, usually, you know, I usually refer them to someone else at that point.
Right.
Because there's nothing I can do. I mean, they have their mind made up, and, you know, and I'm not like beating down their parents saying, you need to accept this. That's not my job. You know, so
yeah, I can see that. What about things like fetishism and stuff? Anybody come in like with a specific? Obviously, they would have to feel it's a problem. You know, many fetishes are not a problem. They're just, you know, just funny little quirks that we all have. But sometimes they can get a little bit, you know, when you start getting into things like, you know, pedophilia and things like that. I mean, I don't know how much you can talk about things in that area. Obviously, if you come across somebody that maybe has interest in that area and is thinking about acting upon it, you have...
Pedophilia?
Yes. Do you have a responsibility to turn that person in?
Yes.
You do? Yes. Okay. So if you... And do they have to admit to it, to have acted upon that, or just the fact that they might be thinking about it? Or is it a judgment call?
It's definitely a judgment call. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, obviously, you know, if they're coming in and saying I have these tendencies, you know, there's nothing, no harm's been done. There's nothing I can do.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Usually that's the smoke screen to say that I've done something. You know what I mean?
I can see that being the case.
Be like, I'm not going to tell you, but I'm looking for help, because usually people don't on that end don't come in until they've been, you know, the FBI has busted through their door, you know.
Right.
You know, and then because it's such a tight community, you know.
Well, I mean, yeah, and I heard a statistic. I can't remember where I heard it. That maybe only 5% of people that have proclivities towards that type of that thing, with children, which is, I'm even having difficulty talking about it. I mean, I can only imagine what you have to deal with. It's just such a taboo that's just even asking about it, but it needs to be talked about, I think. But anyways, maybe only 5% of the people act upon it. That
I don't know the percentage, but I do know that we were talking about the porn sites and everything like that.
Well, and when I say act upon it, I'm not just talking about actually hurting children. I'm actually indulging in child pornography and things like that, which is against the law.
Which is against law, and whoever filmed it obviously is hurting the child.
Of course.
Right, yeah, sure.
Which is why.
Yeah. And when you're caught, what people don't realize is that sometimes the punishment for child porn is pretty severe, because they look at all the pictures. So if you have, say, 10 videos that were busted on your video on your computer, they just don't take that 10 video. They take every time the child was in a sexual compromising position. Every frame is a picture. So you being in video, how many frames could be in a 5-minute clip?
Well, generally 24 to 30 frames a second. Yeah, it's a lot.
So that's why when you go against the judge, and he's like, you have 150,000,
right?
Pornographic pictures.
That's they do that, huh?
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
I'm glad I did not know that.
Yeah.
But yeah, general film speed is generally anywhere in video, 24 to 30 frames per second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So depending on the footage that one may have, it's can really up.
Just wow.
That could be for some. I mean, I mean, when I because I had the police reports and stuff like that, and you're like, and they're pretty graphic, and children were definitely in some pretty abusive situations, occult situations, not only in with adults, but with animals and all kinds of stuff. So it's gets really out there.
I don't get that. I just don't get that at all.
And it's a part of, it's weird, when you're working with these people, sometimes up until their sentence, when they go to prison, they're still coming in the counseling. So it might be like a 2-year process, So you start to get to know these people, they're sitting, face to face with you for an hour every week, and, and, it's a shame. You see how the perversion has really captured that part of that mind, but on some level they still are a nice guy.
I don't think, can you really help people like that through therapy? I mean, it seems to me, and I guess this is getting into an area where I'm hopefully not saying anything that's going to offend anybody. I'm asking questions here.
Yeah, I'll try to answer.
Well, I mean, for somebody who's into incest or children or bestiality,
right,
there's something wrong physically, chemically, mentally. There's a defect, because that's not normal behavior.
I mean, there's some people I have met that have had a normal upbringing. Nothing happened to them, and kind of went down a wrong path, and it got deeper and deeper and deeper. Maybe not to the point of small children, but teens, 12, 13, that type of pornography, they might only be like 20, 21, but, there are some people that have gotten into a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
Because of that. So there are those people. And then there are some people that, like I said, have just been in horrific situations, cults or
Yeah,
or
yeah. I
raised
would
in
imagine there's a conditioning aspect,
absolutely.
it comes from being exposed to certain behaviors and certain pressures and certain, that can damage you.
Yeah.
And
And
some
what they
people-
say is that a sex addict sex addicts are not all pedophiles, but in pedophilia, there is always a sex addict.
Okay. Well,
So,
no,
yeah.
I wouldn't think that because I'm sure that there's
Yeah.
sex addicts out there that just, have normal desires, but just a lot of them,
Yeah.
and it has to be a daily thing or multiple times a day or whatever it can be.
And there's also people that have grown up in different generational things and experiencing different things of their decade,
Yeah.
of like the 60s and
Yeah, things
that
change.
things were very open with art. Sometimes people are just really into exposing themselves. I feel exhibitionism.
Exhibitionism,
stuff
sure,
like that.
yeah.
So there's people that are into that, and just because of their generational thing.
Yeah.
But then,
See, that's to me, that falls under the category of a normal kink, being an exhibitionist or
as
maybe.
long as your spouse is into the same thing.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
I know, but then it becomes, it comes back to the societal thing and what is proper and what is not proper, and those things change over time, as you said, from generation to generation. So yeah, that's a tough call.
Yeah.
Like what really is the ultimate right and the ultimate wrong. I don't know the answers to that.
Yeah.
Which is why you're sitting here.
Right. I'm trying.
But it's a very deep and complicated topic. But I'm going to take a quick second here to cut to a break, and then we'll be right back with Brady Novotny. This podcast is brought to you by RPM Studios, located at 1027 Camels Run Road in Carnegie, Pennsylvania. RPM Studios offers a full line of digital media production services, such as podcasting, live streaming, video production, post-production, multi-track recording, digital graphics. For more information, please check out our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/RPM Studios. Now on with the show. Okay, welcome back to Don't Quit Your Day Job with Brady Novotny. Now, where we left off, we were talking about all kinds of fun stuff about Brady and his job as a counselor and a sex therapist. So now, what we talked about before the break was that pretty much the most prevailing problem seems to be porn addiction.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that's for all kinds of obvious reasons because there's so much of it out there and it's so readily available now. But I mean, you get little things, people coming in like with little, maybe more minor concerns, just like different fetishes that maybe they're embarrassed about or feel might be a problem. Like,
Sure. It comes a part of the process. A fetish or it's hard to. Because if you have like if you
well, how do you define fetish?
yeah, that's
I
the
guess?
thing. It's like if you like something, it's not necessarily a fetish, or if you kind of really like something, it's not really a fetish. It's just a fetish kind of consists of it's like I cannot have sex without it.
I remember going back to the porn thing again. I can remember friends telling me about that where they could not have relationships with their girlfriends, guy friends of mine, without pornography present.
Right.
That's a problem. That can be a problem.
Or so it's like when somebody comes in and they say they have, I mean, it could be anything. So the common ones would be, for men would be like, high heels or something like that.
Yeah, foot fetish. Yeah,
Yeah.
Or shoe fetish. Or,
Shoe fetish. but-
Yeah.
So that can go into a whole
And
different.
that's so common now. I mean, I think that was always there, but why is all
Right.
of a sudden is that like a thing? Is it just because of Quentin Tarantino movies or what?
It's a good question. I think it obviously the high heels they
They enhance the leg.
yeah.
that
I mean,
type
I
of
think
thing.
that was
There's all kinds of obvious
reasons.
Yeah.
And I think the porn industry, really kind of capitalized on that, and really, a lot of the women obviously wore them, and that type of thing. So it's hard to say. I mean, it's not that you cannot like that. You can, and it not be a fetish. It's just if we cannot have sex with, you're more in love with the shoe than the actual person present.
That's where that gets a little dicey. Yeah,
that's where it's different. Or I'm paying so much attention to this particular body part. No, that could be anything.
And that really is a guy thing, our ability to focus on one specific body part. I don't think women are like that. I don't think they...
Yeah, you never hear, typically don't hear girls say, keep your dress shoes on, baby. I mean, it just doesn't work.
Right. I mean, there's specific areas that I just think are like the best parts,
Right.
Just,
sure.
Okay, one thing that I'm not embarrassed to admit is I love necks.
Mm-hmm.
I think a long neck is just wow,
Sure.
And, it's just, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, so what?
Nothing wrong with that.
No.
That's just what people like. And, and that's, but if it becomes the focus and, when it comes to, I don't say a foot fetish, people say, well, just because somebody likes, a woman's feet doesn't mean it's a foot fetish. It means that's all they want.
Yeah,
they want to make love to their feet. That's
yeah,
it.
no, I get that, but when I like that too. But I think it's like it's like a line and a curve thing. The lines, the shape of the foot, just like the shape of the leg, or the small of the back. I love.
They're all erogenous zones. Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
And it's just so no, I'm not completely focused on one.
Well, the female body is beautiful. I mean,
well, a lot of them are
from a heterosexual male,
yes.
To another one. The female body is beautiful.
Work of art, and sometimes a work. I mean, you're talking, when you're talking about people like Margot Robbie, okay, that is God's gift to us on this. I mean, she's probably the sexiest woman alive. I really have. You don't know who she is, do you?
No, but I believe that my wife would be the sexiest woman.
Very well done.
Yeah, thank you.
You've rehearsed this. He really means it too, Jen. He really means it.
Absolutely.
Obviously the sex it's not sex stars, but the people that Hollywood obviously plays that up hugely, as you mentioned and stuff, and
Oh yeah, and even back in some of those old films, I mean, the nylon stockings and the shoe and the leg and all that stuff and the dancers. I mean, the leg fetish and the shoe fetish, or
it's always been there.
Yeah.
I don't think that was so much a fetish. Well, maybe it was. Maybe the stocking was, but just showing off more and more of the female form, they could get away with more and more of it over the years.
Sure.
But yeah, certainly. I mean, hey, look, we're wired that way. We're wired to. It's a really weird thing when you stop and think about it. Why do we like the hips on a woman? Why do we? Because it's a child thing. Why do we like breasts? Because it's it's a nurturing thing. From when we were children, and so there's a practical reason for what we find attractive and why we find it attractive. Underlying, but we don't think of it those terms. It's very superficial and very physical, and that's what we like.
And taking it from, I still don't know how females find us attractive. I mean. We can be pretty,
I think about that too.
I see myself in the mirror. I'm like,
there's more. Yeah, well, it's more obvious these days because now men are starting to do to themselves what women have done for men for centuries. How they make themselves more beautiful. Well, men are now getting more, working out more, and they're getting the V shape, and and the cuts in the abs and everything have become a big thing. Your core. That I can kind of get, I guess. Although I think it was really always there in the homosexual community, I guess. But some women are just, I don't know. I guess they really do like a personality, and
they like the connection.
The connection, a good provider. That goes back to the hunter-gatherer days.
And the connection is a huge friendship and connection. Those first two bubbles I talked about, those are huge. And because you hear a lot, it's like, well, I wasn't really attracted to you at first until I got to know you.
Well, I'll tell you.
Rarely hear that from a guy.
I'll admit to something. When I was younger, I was always I was a shy guy. Always was kind of, and I guess still am to a certain extent. But I had a couple of great relationships. Women that I met who were dating my friends. So I got to know them and they got to know me just as regular people hanging out. There was no pretense. I wasn't hitting on them. They were the girlfriends of my friends, And so I wasn't being shy because I didn't have that ulterior motive, And then they would break up with my friend and we would get together and,
Right.
and it kind of worked out that way, Not ultimately,
Right.
but, But I mean, are we meant to be? Here's a tough one.
Okay, I'll try.
As human animals, as men and women, whatever you want, are we meant to be monogamous?
I think that I guess from a personal standpoint, I guess I'll go personal rather than clinical. I don't. I mean, I really think that we do desire a deep, long connection with somebody. I think that above everything else, above the gymnastics in the bedroom or whatever you want to do, high heels or whatever, above all that, we want somebody to share our life with. And I don't think that, when you're younger and you kind of, I've seen people that where they kind of mess around a lot, and I'm like, but when you're like 60,
because it kind of starts going away, especially.
It's like, well,
I guess especially in women because they go through menopause, whereas men can stay sexually active longer. Am I correct in that?
Well, women can have orgasms their whole life.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do they desire it the way that men do?
Women will typically, once again, that percentage is not for everybody, will always go for connection. That's an out of connection bursts passion and the sex.
And I agree with you. I think even guys too, or like to be, they're looking for that lasting relationship, that real connectivity.
Right, because we want to share
something deeper. But even when you have that, you're still plagued. A lot of times, guys are plagued by that continued allure of what we use. The offensive term that we use is strange. You need that strange. And the cop out or the actual reason for that physiologically is that men are designed to spread their seed as far and wide as they can. I don't know if that's true or not. That's what I've heard. But
in a selfish way, I can see that. And I'm not calling you selfish. I'm saying, to say I'm going to spread, my semen everywhere, Yeah. But it really then objectifies the woman, because then it's like, well, I don't really have a relationship with you. I don't really care so much about you. I just want to, get this out there. I want to conquer you and then leave. Because it's going to be possible to have all these relationships. I mean, when we talk even about Solomon in the Bible, he had how many wives and concubines? He had so many, and even he said it was meaningless and there was nothing to it, So, I think it comes back to, when we really have that deep relationship and really find that love, and even hopefully that, as much as we can, unconditional love with one another, we can have that, I don't know I mean, for me, to learn another woman on top of the one I'm already learning.
Well, I'll tell you what,
it's a lot.
At this point, yeah, as you get older, you're like, no, I don't want to do that again. No, I don't want to do that.
Usually, when people have affairs, there's a big miss, and it's been missing for a while, and it's usually connection, or.
Well, along that argument, to maybe galvanize that concept a little bit, I like to think, and I'm not going to get off on this tangent, but I'm very much into the evolution of the human race and how we're evolving socially, and I think that's part of what's happening with our whole acceptance of socially of homosexuality and some of the other things that are happening today. Eventually, things are accepted. And it's been that way for a long time. What was taboo yesterday is today's normal, and it's all good. And I'm hoping that we as humans, that's going to continue. And again, I promise I won't get off on this tangent, but that's going to continue to the point where, the lines, between countries, these ridiculously invisible borders that we place around ourselves, the tribalism, the nationalism, and yes, sometimes even the religion, that keeps us separate. I think that the ultimate survival of the human race depends on us becoming humans and realizing that we are all the same. We are all human. So maybe this whole thing with us, growing into these long-term relationships, and maybe that's just one symptom of where we're supposed to be heading, as humans, as mankind. I don't know.
I think that, even referencing the Bible again, going back, to the days of, early biblical times, there, homosexuality and all that stuff, and perversion, and temple prostitutes, and so everything's been going on for.
It's been there
a long time.
Yeah.
So, it would be nice if we were actually evolving to more, stronger relationships, more loving relationships, and less.
I like to, with all the skepticism and the cynicism that's going around today, I like to think that we are actually, when we quit all our bitching and moaning about, conservatives versus liberals and all the other crap we're screaming about out there and being overly sensitive to, that we are kind of going in that direction. I do think we are becoming. I don't know.
I
want to keep a positive attitude about it. I really do.
I mean, the divorce rate is still high. And it's,
Is it still about 50%?
No, it's above that now.
It's above that.
Yeah. And the exposure to pornography, the age is like 4. In my field, it's busy. And it's probably going to, unfortunately, get worse as time goes on.
Do you think that the institution of marriage is maybe becoming a bit outdated?
Personally, I think that it's something that we're always going to want to strive for, that intimate connection with somebody. I still think that we're going to want to be with somebody that truly loves us. I believe in marriage. I'm a strong believer in marriage, and I because I wanted to get married when I met my wife. Or she wasn't my wife at the time, but something drew me to that. Why? Mm-hmm. What is that? Mm-hmm. Why do I want to just be with this one person? Why do I want to make a life with this person? And that was something that was, it was a desire inside of me, and I had to come from somewhere, and as well with her. And so my hopes is that, people, unfortunately we have a lot of bad role models growing up, and with all these other things coming against us, like, well, this is what sex is supposed to be like, or this is what, you're supposed to go out and meet as many people as you want people meet and have affairs over, by doing Word with Friends. It's crazy. People sending pictures back and forth, and they're married to have kids, and they're showing them pictures of their this or that. And I'm like,
that's another new one. That's a bit much.
And it just, is life that boring? Why? What's the escape? What are we escaping? Through. Trying to find excitement outside. Why not put the effort into our own relationship that's staring in front of us? Because when you love, I know this, when you truly love the person that you're with, for me, when I truly love my wife, she blossoms. She really flourishes. And if I pull away, I notice. So there's something about a marriage relationship that really blossoms each other, and I think that's a very beautiful thing. Now, I know that's not for everybody, but at least in my experience, I find that to be very, very fulfilling.
How do you feel about the concept that well, there's apparently the difference between falling in love and true love. Falling in love being a chemical trick of the brain to get us to procreate, but then that wears off, that excitement, the butterflies, all that. Then you find real love,
Yes.
that's deeper and long lasting and not so.
Yeah, the phileo love, right? The
Phileo love?
Yeah, the
I've never heard that term.
Off of the friendship love, Philadelphia phileo, friendship, and then there's the agape love, which is the unconditional love, which we go into, and then there's the erotic love, which is the puppy dog love, the one that gets you like the butterflies and everything. So the friendship, this is where Gottman got his thing, the phileo, what they call it. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, which is the friendship, and then the erotic, which is where I just can't wait to see you. I gotta. I get these butterflies. I want to look my best I can, and then that goes away. And through all that, hopefully, it morphs into unconditional love, which is the agape love, which is where we enter into marriage and we deal with real life, and deal with real things.
Okay, you brought up the term when we were on break. And it seems like you wanted to get into this, but I guess this has getting into the chemistry of the brain and things like that. You mentioned something called oxytocin.
Yes, and the bonding hormone that's released in the brain is done. Whenever we typically when we achieve orgasm, this hormone's released into our body, but it only releases when we're in contact with another human being. So if masturbation, it doesn't get released.
Really? I've not heard of this before.
Yeah. So there's no bonding thing, element being released. So you feel somewhat empty. You might feel the physical relief, but there's no connection. There's a lack of satisfaction. And when we're with, say your spouse, that's released in both of you, and you have this wash over you that's connecting and bonding, and it's hopefully strengthening your relationship. So that's, it's an interesting part of how that works. And, so a lot of times people will say when they're addicted to porn, they just feel, not only all the shame that's tied to it, but they just feel empty. And that's part of the reason.
Right.
So
how do you advise people when they come to you with this stuff? I realize that that's not your great goal, is to put forth advice, but to maybe guide them towards finding the answers in themselves or something. But when you have to lay down the gauntlet,
right,
because
Well, once again, it's there's definitely treatment protocols, but there's also it's individualized. So what is a person looking for? I can't stop, help me stop. If I don't stop, my marriage is over. There could be a list of many, many different things that are bringing this person in right now. And we have to assess what's the best, where are they? Are they wanting to conform to the situation, or are they wanting to transform something on the inside? And conforming, we learned that in drug and alcohol counseling, meaning that, you got busted with weed and your parole officer wants you to go to counseling, and you have to conform to what he says so you can get off of, or probation officer, to get off of the charge or whatever. So, or the wife says, or the husband says, you need to go to counseling, in order to fix this. But then there are times when people say, no, I really do not want this. So they're in a different season of change, what we call, and they're more determined inside. So we have to do what's right. And sometimes for some people that's complete abstinence, like AA would be, and sometimes there's a method called harms reduction. And sometimes we reduce harm, to the body or to the relationship, meaning, if somebody's, chronically masturbating to porn, daily, and sometimes, people have come in multiple, upwards of 6 hours a day, to the point where they may have hurt themselves, So, we have to reduce harm to the body, and when you're used to doing that, if that's your routine, if that's how you wake up in the morning, or if that's how you go to bed at night, we have to change that. We have to unpair things. We have to, maybe reduce the frequency, maybe reduce what we're watching. One of the common things that I do is reduce, the amount of time. So if your, standard time is on porn for 45 minutes, we reduce that to 15, or amount of times during the week or something like that. Then we reduce maybe to video to still pictures, and then maybe reduce from pictures to something else. I mean, so it's a reduction, to hopefully bring you back into balance. And ultimately, the goal is to get you to an abstinence type place, so because sometimes when you just do abstinence, then you're just really relying on willpower to get you through, and that's how relapse happens.
Right.
So people, as we know from the AA community, you can do it because there's people that are very successful at it. But relapse does happen, and that's why, one of the reasons why. So they found out that harms reduction is more scientific or research based, more evidence based, proven to help better for the person.
Is there any kind of tricks to the trade? Maybe something that the average layman doesn't know about that you guys do? Any secret formulas that you can bestow upon us here?
Well, that's a good question. It is not secret, but it is really finding out what the person really wants. Why are you here? Are you just wanting to talk? Are you just wanting a safe place? Do you really want to get out of this? And it's all individualized. Do we have some type of magic pill, or electric shock therapy does still exist these days, but in hospitals. But that's more for
what
schizophrenia.
Does that really do to you? I mean, electric shock therapy. What does that? It's like it resets the brain or something.
Yeah, I believe it. I don't do. I don't.
I know that's not part of your treatment regimen,
but it's they put you out. It's in the hospital. It's not like the old days where
the old cuckoo's nest scene with Jack Nicholson and
But I think it basically kills the short-term memory cells, because I've had people that have been in for that treatment. And they'll call me up and they'll say, I don't remember how to get to the office. Where are you located? I'm like, I just saw you last week.
Wow.
Well, it's like, well, I had my treatment. I'm like, okay. So sometimes, it kills the short-term memory, which if you're depressed or something, like really suicidal or something, would kill those, thoughts, I guess.
So then you actually treat people in sex therapy, and maybe they're receiving other types of therapy from other people.
Well, I do sex therapy as part of it, but sometimes I do general practitioner stuff. Like
okay.
I'll see people for depression or anxiety, or other general.
How do you deal with things like that? I mean, you don't dispense prescriptions or anything like that, right?
No. Usually, once again, what do they want in treatment for? There's a technique or a treatment plan or treatment protocol called cognitive behavioral therapy,
right?
Which is mainly what I kind of go down, and that has its set of rules, so to speak, set of steps that we go by, and that's really about adjusting your thinking patterns and stuff like that. And then obviously we always recommend people go get checked up by their doctor. Check if you're depressed. Is it your thinking, or is it we live in Pittsburgh.
How do you feel about things like antidepressants and MAO inhibitors and things like that?
They're made to help. They're not made as an end result. They're not made to be
it's a means to an end.
They're supposed to help you to get to the point where you can go to counseling and work on it, not necessarily, oh, well, this is my wonder drug and that's it. So unfortunately.
But yet some people are on antidepressants and anti-anxiety.
Sure.
Benzodiazepams and, whatever. for years and years. So how is that justified? And things like Valium, Xanax.
Yeah.
I hear tell that things like opioid addiction, generally withdrawal from opioid addiction, does not kill you. It's very, very uncomfortable and unpleasant, but it doesn't kill you. But withdrawal from benzos can kill you, cause seizures and things like that. So we hear a lot about opioid addiction, but it seems to me that a lot of doctors are dispensing, benzos in a sort of haphazard, somewhat dangerous manner.
Sure, yeah, and I mean, you can go into. I mean, at least you could. I don't know if it is like that now, but if you're depressed, they'll give you something or this.
In the short term, I'm sure those are helpful.
Right,
those drugs are helpful.
But how it's monitored, I think, is with people that have been addicted to heroin or stuff like that, or that are on the Suboxone and stuff like that. They do. At least the insurance requires them to see a therapist as well.
Right.
So they won't get their prescription fulfilled if they don't have a counseling appointment, which is good. And if you're depressed and you're suicidal and stuff like that, I mean, it shouldn't be just a recommendation. It should be like you should get therapy. I mean, it should work together. It really should. But
have you ever had a situation where somebody told you something in confidence, whether it be the fact that they are thinking about hurting themselves or thinking about hurting others, where you had to take that additional step and notify authorities? Have you ever had to do that? Is that something if you don't feel comfortable talking about that? Then.
Yeah, there's been people that have. Well, I used to volunteer at the Suicide Hotline Center as well.
Oh, really?
So
okay,
before
cool.
I got into practice, I did the 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. shift. So I got everybody that wanted to jump off the bridge. So I've called a lot of police, to the scenes, especially back in that day. So yeah. So I guess I have. It's not as common in private practice. I have had people that I've seen on a Friday and, somebody's called me for the next appointment and said, they're no longer here, and they seemed fine when they left.
Have you always been in private practice, or did you do is there some type of intermediate step where you had to work for a clinic, like a high volume clinic where you just had to deal with
the trench job? Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yes.
Triage or whatever you want to.
Yeah, I did that. It was at a drug and alcohol facility, and I did individual counseling and group work, IOP, they call it, intensive outpatient. So, yeah, I did that for a while. And
then how did you actually?
I've had people throw up in my office. I had to do drug tests, so I had urine sitting on my desk while I was eating lunch. It sucked. I hate it.
Happens all the time around here.
I hate it every minute. Now you know why I just want to play guitar.
So how did you get into the private practice, and how do you transition and build up a client base, and how do people find you? I mean, how does that work?
For me, it was something I know I wanted to do, and I knew that's what I was going to do. And I knew a guy that was already in the business, and he said I can, use his office when he wasn't using it. So eventually we started a practice together. But I mainly, like I said, I had a lot of connections with a lot of different pastors in the area. So, I get a lot of referrals from churches, and then just referral sites, and then your name starts to pick up, after about a year. And, especially in the sex therapy world, there's not a whole lot of us around. So if you type in sex therapist, you're only going to get a handful of us. They're going to pop up. So, that's one of the niches I have that really helps in the biz.
That's good. That's good. You want to put forth some information that we can add to our website later on to how people can find you? Is that ethical? I mean, do you do that, or is it?
Well, no, you can definitely type in my name, Brady Novotny. There's a site called Psychology Today, and we're in the Cranberry Township area. Okay. You can definitely find my information there. I'm in my practice is Transformation Counseling Center, and we're in Cranberry Township, and we're just type that into the internet and we'll pop up. So that's our website, and it's pretty. Just type in my name. You're gonna see a lot of
Sure.
A lot of album stuff listed, but then you'll see some of the
Well,
same
I
guy.
want to close out with that too, because I want you
Right.
to let everybody know what you're up to too with your music.
So once you get past the album stuff, you'll see. Oh, he's the
Oh,
same
look,
guy.
he does this too.
Right? Is this the same guy?
He'll talk to us about what?
So
Really?
right.
Okay. So what's up with Brady Novotny, guitarist?
Look at the guitarist. Yes, the more lighter side of the job. It's lots going on. Doing.
You got a couple of good gigs coming up.
Oh yeah, we're looking forward to coming up here in a few weeks. We're gonna be playing at Hard Rock with Grammy-nominated David Leonard. He's a Christian artist. So we're opening up for him, and then a couple weeks later, I think October 10th, we're opening up for former guitarist of Guns N' Roses, Bumblefoot, and
Ron Thal.
And Sons of Apollo, and
Yep, Sons of Apollo's got their new record coming out, I believe, this week, I think. Or is it, I know they just released a live DVD, and they're, I believe they're just mixing the new album right now, the second album right now. But
I know he's on tour. And,
is there any notable members in his band, in Ron's band?
I tried to look that up. I couldn't find. I didn't know who was playing in his band. And then early next year, we're gonna go up for Uli John Roth, which is another great guitar player.
Living legend.
Yes.
Yep.
At the Craft House. So, but we're doing some more gigs coming up locally. But those are the big headliners right now. And the album's out. Passions Collide. Got a word.
A lot's happened for you since the first time you were here, and we talk about your record. I mean,
right.
you've been kicking some butt out there.
Yeah, been doing a lot of publicity, and we're going to shoot another video here in October. So everything's up and running.
Well, not here. It's
right,
in St. Augustine, Florida.
Right. But it's going to be a fun time. So a lot of hat switching, back and forth.
Cool.
So it's fun.
Makes a well-rounded person.
I hope so.
Well, listen, thank you so much for coming back in, and it was great having you. And I want to make you part of, we talked about, we're going to be having a roundtable discussions where we're just going to pick a topic and just go crazy and riff. And we're going to have a bunch of lunatic people here who are very loudmouthed and opinionated.
Right.
And I'm sure there'll be lots of yelling and screaming,
right.
and maybe even some punching and pushing.
Right. Nice.
So we'll see how it all turns out. But Brady, thanks again so much for coming in. And thank you, everybody, for tuning into the show. And we hope you'll tune in next time for Don't Quit Your Day Job. Thank you, and good night.